right. After last week's presidential debate, Vice President Mike Pence and Senator Kamala Harris are getting ready for their own debate, this time in Salt Lake City, Utah.
And joining us now on the Zoom call to talk about what we can expect is Tracy Brame. She is the Associate Dean of WMU Cooley Law. And welcome back. And let's pick up right where we left off, talking about some of the things that we could hear on stage tonight. What do you think will be some of the hitting points for these candidates as far as their strengths and weaknesses and things that they could potentially be talking about on stage?
Absolutely. So, obviously, because of everything going on with the pandemic, that is a potential point of vulnerability for the president. And Vice President Pence, as the head of the COVID task force, will, almost certainly be asked questions about that and about the administration's response to COVID, which has been, controversial to say the least, and particularly since the virus has now infiltrated the White House and several people associated with it, that's almost certain to be a topic. And I think that Vice President Pence will try to, touch on Senator Harris's weak spots, such as kind of her evolving views about healthcare or some of her stances about criminal justice reform and things like that. So I think, each will certainly try to exploit each other's weaknesses, so to speak, and then highlight, hopefully, what they think that their side will do to move the country forward.
We did touch on it a little bit in the last hour, but I feel like sometimes people forget that the vice presidential candidates also have a debate every election year. But why is it especially important this year, and why do people maybe need to actually tune in to this debate?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that this would be a wonderful debate to watch. My son told me he's going to watch it on his way home from soccer practice tonight, and he's a freshman in high school. I think that a lot of people are paying attention to this, again, for a couple of reasons. First of all, unfortunately, the presidential debate was I don't know, in some ways more of a spectacle than it was substantive. And so I think that people are looking to Vice President Pence and to Kamala Harris for maybe a more substantive and civil debate where they can actually get a sense of the actual stances of both parties. And in a lot of ways, former Vice President Biden his tagline has been, kind of something like this battle for the soul of America. And in some ways, these two vice presidential candidates, right, are an even more striking example of that than the presidential candidates. Again, the presidential candidates, are both in their 70s, the oldest candidates that we've had in history, both older white men. And here you have this rather stark contrast, right, between Mike Pence and then this woman of color, that we've never had in the White House as a president or vice president. Obviously, we had Mrs. Obama, but so a very stark contrast at the vice president level. And one of these vice presidential candidates could very well, right, be president no later than 2024. And so a very, very important time in our history, I think, as we look certainly at what the next 4 years are going to look like, but as importantly, what our country is going to look like, what our politics are going to look like 4 years from now, because that could vary drastically depending on which of these vice presidents ends up in office.
Right, and as you said, they could even be running as candidates themselves at the top of the ticket at some point. But one more question for you before we let you go. Of course, we'll bring you back again next hour, but let's talk about the styles of these two candidates between Senator Harris and Vice President Pence, because we've heard them speak. Of course, Mike Pence has been vice president for a long time. Senator Kamala Harris has been in Congress for a long time, so we know what they sound like when they are making addresses. But what about the debate styles of these two, and how will they differ from what we saw during the presidential debates?
So again, and that's a very interesting question. So again, I think it'll be very different from the presidential debate. I don't think that Joe Biden actually, had a good opportunity to have a measured, kind of conversation on the debate stage for lots of reasons. But I think here you'll see much different styles from both candidates. I think Mike Pence, again, he has a very good handle on the issues. He is understated, but a formidable, right, debater in the sense that he is confident. Right. He says what he says with confidence and strength. He doesn't waver often. It's hard to throw him. I heard Kamala Harris, acknowledge that this is not going to be an easy debate. She is an attorney. She is a prosecutor, and prosecutors are known for their, tenacity and ability to make arguments and to support their arguments. But, she has to be careful to the extent that she's on the attack, right? And she has to kind of strike this balance between not seeming like she's kicking a man while he's down, that being President Trump, even when this man, right, won't admit that he's down. She has to be, she has to be careful about her tone. And I think that she has to hold her own and establish her own presence, certainly support Joe Biden, but also let the electorate know who she is. Because again, there are a lot of people who've already made up their minds. And to the extent she's speaking to the people that have not, I think that she, needs to come across as someone that they can trust in that vice presidential role. And as we stated earlier, maybe even down the line in a presidential role. So I think you'll see a much more measured debate, an attempt to dive a little deeper into the issues and give the viewers, right, a sense of, of the differences in policy between the two candidates and parties.
All right. Tracy Brame, Associate Dean of Cooley Law School. We appreciate you being with us this hour. We'll see you in just about an hour from now. And keep in mind that debate does start at 9 p.m.
Yes. All right.
Absolutely. Thank you again for having me.
Thank you for joining us.